What happens when a shady past collides with faith, family, and life on the open road? Garr Russell has lived it all. He founded Fireside RV Rental, wrote My Real Estate Story and My His Story, and keeps himself inspired with post-it notes of scriptures and quotes. In this episode, Garr and I talk about redemption, adventure, and the road that changed everything. Welcome to Journey with Jake. This is a podcast about adventure and how through our adventures we can overcome the challenges of life that come our way. While I expect you will learn some things about different adventures, this show will entertain you. Each episode will feature a different guest or guests as they share experiences and stories from the different adventures they have been on. Not only will you be entertained, but you will also hear the failures and trials each guest faces and what they have done or are doing to overcome the hardships that come their way. My goal is to take each of us on a journey through the experiences of my guests with the hope that you'll be entertained and inspired to overcome your day-to-day challenges. After all, it's not all about the destination as it is about the journey. Before we jump into today's conversation, just a quick reminder, be sure to follow me on Instagram and YouTube at Journey with Jake Podcast, and don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. I'm also proud to be part of the Podmatch Podcast Network. Now, today's guest, Garr Russell, has such a powerful story of faith and redemption. From his shady past to finding God and letting that faith shape his life, Garr has built Fireside RV Rental, written 2 books, and continues to share the hope he's found in Christ. If you enjoy this episode, I think you'll also connect with bonus episode 8 with Dr. Douglas Brower, where we dive into faith and the journey it inspires. Let's get to my conversation with Garr Russell. All right, I've got Garr Russell with me on the show today. Garr, welcome to Journey with Jake.
Hey, Jake, excited to go on a journey with you.
Absolutely. I'm excited to talk to you. Looking at your bio, looking at who you are a little bit, at first I thought, okay, we're going to talk about living in an RV. It looks like, 5 or 6 years you spent full-time living in an RV with your family, your kids, and the whole bit. So I thought, oh yeah, that's super adventurous. This is an adventure podcast. But then the more I got into it and looked at who you are, I thought, I just want to hear who Garr is and hear his story. So before we get rolling into who you are, just maybe a little background, kind of where you're from, where you grew up, that sort of thing, and then we'll kind of get into your journey.
Yeah, so currently I live in Florida where I was actually born, but I only lived here for a couple of years. About 3 years old, we moved up to Michigan, and that's where I spent most of my life, the west coast of Michigan, Grand Rapids area. Yeah, we came down to Florida about 6, 7 years ago. We were full-time RVers for about 5 years. We went for about 5 months. Then I told my wife I want to go for, well, no, we went for 3 months. We go for 3 months after we closed for the season. And I told my wife I want to go for the whole winter. As soon as my toes start getting cold, I want to leave Michigan and not come back until I know they won't be cold when I return. And that's how we ended up in this little town of Okeechobee, Florida that we're in right now. And
so Okeechobee's kind of that was the warm spot for you.
Yeah, Okeechobee was far enough south to where it stays decent throughout the winter, and it was kind of last minute when we looked to leave for the whole winter. So it was kind of like our third choice. The first couple campgrounds that we called, they were already full for the winter. But when we called the KOA, which actually, for those y'all that know KOA, it's campgrounds that are all around the country. The largest KOA in the country is here in Okeechobee, and they happened to have a spot open, and it met our criteria of what we were looking for, and we ended up here.
Nice, very good. So growing up in Michigan, do you come from a big family, small family, siblings, anything like that?
Yeah, I have 3 siblings, and it's interesting. Some of the questions you're asking me, you don't ask those on much podcasts, so I like that. That's cool. I'm like, you normally like dive right into it, so I'm like having to like go into the brain and like,
Yeah,
okay,
making you think a
wait,
little
do I
bit
have a
here.
big family? Do I have a small family? Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I grew up, and my parents got divorced in 5th grade. So that kind of set my life on a course. Those y'all that have, separated families like that, you know what I'm talking about. Life gets interesting. And yeah, my mom remarried. It's funny story. My dad, my stepdad, and my father-in-law all have the same name of Gary, and that's where my name came from, Garr. So
Your dad, your stepdad, and your grandfather, is what you said?
my father-in-law.
And your father-in-law. Geez, okay, your father-in-law, your dad, and your stepdad. Wow, okay.
Yeah, what's
That
the
is pretty
odds,
funny.
huh?
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Yep, yep. I turned down the road when my parents divorced. I turned down the road of becoming like the class clown, trying to make everybody laugh, and then started getting into lots of trouble. Actually, the first time I sat inside of a jail cell was in fifth grade.
What?
Yeah.
What could you have possibly done in the fifth grade to land you in jail?
Yeah. So I lived right across the street from the police station was my house. The other side of the police station was the elementary school that I went to. And we had call like a fun night where you do like the carnival at school and all that stuff and you go to different rooms. Well, somebody decided that they wanted my bike and my stepdad had just bought it for me. I remember it perfectly. It was a Fuji Odessa. It was like a really nice bike. Well, this kid started picking on me and he decided he wanted my bike. Well, I had a pocket knife. So I pulled out my pocket knife, held it towards the kid, told him to back off, and then I got on my bike and pedaled my butt home. Well, literally minutes later, here's police officers, kids from the fun night, all walking across the street to my house. And a police officer brought me and sat me in a jail cell to, scare me. And I thought I was going to prison. And yeah, so that was one of many, many stories of me being quite the troublemaker and getting into it. I don't know. I feel like that story though. I had a defense though. I don't know. What do you think, Jake?
I think so. I mean, you had a defense on that one. I Cop was trying to do the whole scared straight technique or whatever, scared the put you and make you feel like you go to prison or whatever, because it's scary to not commit any more crimes. But as far as I understand, though, you kind of did have a little up and down life as far as getting into trouble and dealing with some drugs and things like that. What's the story on that? Was it kind of right, in high school did that start happening? Was it after high school? Like, when did you find yourself getting into trouble?
Yeah, it was continue on in fifth grade. I can remember. I don't know how old you are. I'm 47. How old are you, Jake?
48. I'm right there with you.
48. Okay. So you remember how we used to French roll our jeans back in the day?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I used that to my advantage to steal. I would French roll my jeans and then I cut the lining out of my pockets. So I could go into a store, drop something in my pocket, and it would fall to the bottom of my French rolled jeans. So here I am in fifth grade. I've got cigarettes, cigars, all the things. I remember, Jake, standing outside of my classroom in fifth grade, smoking a cigarette, looking in at the rest of the class. Like that's how quick I went down that path. And then obviously it is like they say, the gateway stuff. It's literally one thing to the next to the next. And in junior high, I'd have a bottle of liquor in my locker. And I mean just I went down that road very fast. I got expelled from high school in ninth grade. Then I dropped out from the next school in 10th grade. And I turned to selling drugs and crime and all kinds of other things. And yeah, I was all the way down that road.
What was I guess, the rock bottom point for you? I mean, when was it like, hey, I can't keep doing this? When did that happen for you?
You would think it was the second time I got raided for maintaining a drug house and got put into jail, but it wasn't because shortly after that I got out and I had some really good intentions. I've been an entrepreneur since I was a young one, right? I love the scripture that says the gifts and callings of God are without repentance. So before I had given my life to the Lord in 2003, I was using my entrepreneurial skills to do all these other things. So after I got out of jail that second time for running a drug home, I enrolled into online school and things only lasted for a handful of months and I was back to some of the similar habits as far as, drinking, drugs. But I had gotten an old job back. Employer let me come back. And I met a guy named Skip, who I was the laborer. He was the driver. We put all the cones and barrels out on the road doing traffic control. Well, Skip would say, "Hey, Gar, I'm driving. Would you do me a favor and read my Bible to me?" And so I would read him his Bible while he was driving. And then one thing next led to the next, and then I just felt that conviction, that tug of the Holy Spirit, and I gave my life to the Lord there right at the time clock, and so that was kind of the rock bottom slash I need to make a change moment there with my buddy Skip.
And was that in 2003? Because you mentioned 2003.
Yeah, that was in 2003. Yep.
Wow. So let's see, you were probably what, 20? How old were you in 2003? I'm trying to think how old I was. 25 ish?
So yeah, 2003. Yeah, so about
25,
24 years ago. Yeah.
24. Okay. Yeah. With that happening to you and kind of realizing, hey, I can't keep living this way, what does that mean to you to have God in your life?
Man, it was a total. So some of the stories that I shared, right? I've got a pretty shady past. So, I prayed with my buddy Skip there at the time clock, and then I went to church with him that Sunday. And this was a big mega church, seats like 5,000 people. And they do the altar call at the end. And I went up for the altar call. Well, then they call you off over into this room after that. And they, talk to you about a couple of things. I felt the grace of God so heavy from all the things that I had done that literally no one else could have a conversation in the room because I'm like snot, crying, bawling, loud. So it literally just was a total 180 transformation. It wrecked me. It changed me literally. You hear our pastor was just talking about this Sunday at church about he doesn't have one of those stories like so many people have of this radical salvation. He's like, I just grew up a good kid. I don't know. But I was one of those stories where it was a radical transformation where I literally just felt the grace of God just in such a heavy way that it literally just changed me over.
Because of the shady past and things like that, for you, what is like the idea of failure and forgiveness? How does that play into it for you? Because obviously you probably, you needed to feel forgiven, and it sounds like you were, but kind of talk to me about like forgiveness a little bit.
Yeah, my wife will joke about that because she'd say somebody could break into our house, take everything we have, and I'd invite them over for lunch the next day because I felt the forgiveness, the grace of God so heavily. I've experienced it so heavily. I mean, when I was dealing drugs, I was selling crystal meth, cocaine, GHB, which is known as the date rape drug. I mean, I did some horrible things. And so to feel that grace of God the way that I did, it's to hurt my feelings or offend me or something like that. It's almost near impossible. My wife, on the other hand, she was such a good kid growing up. She has such a strong moral compass, that she feels it a little bit differently when she sees somebody doing wrong or this or that. I just look at them through the eyes of grace, like, oh, they don't know what they're doing. They're blinded. They're walking in, whatever. So it's definitely interesting.
Wow. And speaking of your wife, how did she come to play? How did you meet her? What's that whole story about?
Yeah, I met my wife actually through my mom. My mom hooked us up. Yeah. It was my grandma Emma had passed away, and she had left an inheritance to my mom, and my mom was going to the bank to pull out a sum of money. And so I went with my mom, and my mom was actually living with me at the time. I was helping my mom get sober. My mom had struggled with alcohol all of her life through some traumatic events that she went through. And at that point in my life, I was walking closely with the Lord. I was just getting ready to close on the purchase of my first home. And so there I am in the bank, sitting in the waiting area. My mom's in the office with Tina, my now wife, and my mom's playing matchmaker. And so that's how I met my wife, was through my mom.
That's incredible. That's a good story. I love that. And how many kids do you have?
4.
4 kids. Wow. Okay. You got 4 kids. How did the whole RV thing come about? How did that happen?
Yeah, so the RV business that we have, that was a total pain to purpose story, I call it, because I had bought my wife a RV for our 10-year wedding anniversary. She was 7 months pregnant with number 4, and she was chasing a toddler around. So there we are, brand new RV. I bring it to the campground, set it up. Sorry, one second. I just hear this like
I hear a little beep or something.
feedback or something. Yeah. Okay. No worries. So we're set up at a campground, and my wife is just sweating, miserable, pregnant, all the things, and she tells me she's going home. And I thought she was going home to grab something, but no, she was like going home and not coming back. And so there I sat at the campground with my two older kids in this brand new camper I just bought, thinking, man, my wife does not like camping. So, we had owned a business. I had built a real estate portfolio, had, entrepreneurial experience. And I thought, well, I'm going to rent this thing out. So I went on to Craigslist and I put it up for rent. And within a couple hours, people are reaching out to me wanting to rent my camper. So instantly the light goes off. I'm like, man, I got something here. So I reached out to some friends and family. I said, hey, I'm renting my camper out. Would you like me to rent out yours for you too? And they're like, yeah, sure. Well, my sister in law said, no, that's gross. Someone's not sleeping in the bed of my camper. Like, that's a horrible idea. No. But for the majority, most people are like, yeah, my camper sits around most of the time and does nothing. Yeah, sounds good. And so it just kind of spiraled from there. It turned into I went and bought a handful of campers. And then I quickly heard the Lord say, no, don't do that. Use other people's campers. Don't go and get into a bunch of debt, and a bunch of payments. Use other people's assets, build the business that way. So I did that. Fast forward a handful of years, we went through the process of turning it into a franchise. And, we built all the systems and processes and software and all the stuff. Then we turned it into a franchise opportunity. And now we have about 70 locations around the country.
Wow. And it's called Fireside, right? Fireside, there's your hat.
Yeah, Fireside RV Rental. Yeah.
That's a good concept. And now that you're explaining it to me, because I was trying to figure out how you do this. And I was kind of looking at, yeah, you got locations everywhere, over 70, like you said. That makes sense to use what people already have rather than purchasing a bunch and going into debt. You're an entrepreneur, man. You got the whole business thing down.
Yeah, so it's other people's assets. It's just like people do with Airbnb arbitrage and Turo managing other people's cars. Heck, I seen a website recently where you can rent out your swim pool. It's called like Swimly or something. Like
Wow.
you name it, you rent it out. It's amazing what you can do. And there's websites just like there's Airbnb for renting your home. There's RV Share and Outdoorsy. So there's these peer-to-peer websites, and we work side by side with them. A lot of people will think we're competitors of theirs, but no, we're the property management piece. They're the marketing platform. So we work side by side. We're RV Share's largest partner.
Oh, wow. Okay. Very good. I love it. And obviously you had a love for RVing because you've been doing it for a while. What makes you decide that you're going to go on the life on the road with kids in tow, homeschooling them the whole bit? What makes someone want to do that?
We were enjoying the RVing after my wife had number four, Isabella. We started camping. We were enjoying it. And we actually had something painful happen in our family with one of our children. And honestly, we're like, you know what? We're just getting on the road. We're just going to go travel for a little bit. That's literally how it started. Is we just decided to go hit the road for a couple weeks, and then it turned into, all right, we're going to actually go for 3 months, and then it just escalated from there. Like, wow, we're having a blast. We're going to go longer, and man, it's such a beautiful thing to travel around, set up at different campgrounds for a night or a week, meet different people from different backgrounds, have different sceneries. Especially with homeschooling, it's just such a beautiful way to travel and see, and just there's nothing like it. It's amazing.
Had you been homeschooling your kids prior to that? So you kind of had that base, or was that like, hey, we're going to go travel around. We got to learn how to homeschool?
Yeah, we've homeschooled our kids since the beginning. That's something I've always had a heart to do, is homeschool our kids. I always told my wife when we were dating, I said, I want to live in Florida someday. I want to homeschool my kids, and I want to have five of them. And so we're at two of the three. We have several, like we call them like unofficially adopted kids, for my 16-year-old Emma. She just has a heart for hurting teenagers, and she just seems to draw them in and love on them and stuff. So we have a lot of those kids that end up at our house and staying the nights here and there, and us loving on them. But yeah, it's always had been a desire of mine to homeschool. I think it just comes back to like the entrepreneurial spirit that's in me. I've always had that heart to live life on my terms. So not an employer telling me where to be and when to be there, not having something that like dictates my schedule. And when you've got, school Monday through Friday, certain hours, that limits you to what you can do as far as, travel and adventures and stuff.
I've always admired that about entrepreneurs and just how you can you want to live life on your own terms and do things. And that doesn't come without sacrifice. I mean, obviously there's some sacrifice you have to make, and there's a lot of hard work and things like that. But I've always respected that and admired that. That's why I like doing the show too, when I get to talk to people like you and how you're living that. Take me back to that first moment then, those 2 weeks. You said there was kind of some tough going on. So was it the idea was like, let's just do this just to kind of take our mind off things, just to get away? Was that kind of the point behind that first 2 weeks?
Yeah, it was almost like let's just gather our little ducks and hit the road. Like it's kind of like honestly, like we ran, like we had something happen, and it's not. My wife doesn't like me to share it because it's my child's story more than mine. With
Absolutely.
her age. But you can imagine as a parent, something that would happen to make you want to just run, and that's really what we did. We're like, let's just go, let's just get away. Let's just kind of recalibrate. Let's just connect with our kids, and so that's what we did. It's amazing. So this summer we've done a lot of travel, but it was a lot of flying. Like we went to California a couple times. We did a lot of travel, but we didn't RV really. We RV'd once actually for like 10 days. That's funny. I don't even consider that travel. It was only 10 days. But last summer we went for a couple months up to Michigan. And it's so amazing. Like my teenager, right? Female teenager friendships, this and that. Like that's their world. And she was, kicking and screaming for us to hit the road for that long. But I tell you what, man, Jake, within several hours of just being on the road, like all of a sudden you just disconnect. It's just beautiful, to just be able to unplug like that. And sure enough, we did. And our kids had a blast. It's just like a vacation. It's just you get far away enough from home that all of a sudden all the worries and thoughts of home seem to just kind of fade into the distance.
And I think that's a big thing these days too. It's just there's so much pressure, even like on our teenagers too. Or I have a teenage daughter as well, and there's so much pressure. I think that being able to disconnect, allow them to disconnect, that's got to be huge. Did you ever have a moment when you're traveling where you're on the road, and I don't know if it was a place that you were at or maybe some people that you came across, but just a moment where you're like, this is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm out here. Any moments like that you could share?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely several of them. I mean, the people that we met was amazing. We were in California and we met a couple from Texas that we just really connected with. They had 7 kids. They were on the road in a big, huge Prevo. And we ended up going on a missions trip with them to Dominican Republic. La Jolla Beach in California was just a beautiful time. Hiking up into Joshua Tree with our kids, going up the East Coast and going whale watching, and just those moments. Honestly, and two, the most special moment that we ever had, I feel that just pops up in my mind is, and I don't even remember where it was. And this is the cool thing about it, right? We weren't at a big tourist place. It was this little campground that had this little river that ran through it, and we just sat on the side of that river with the kids making little boats and stuff out of wood and sticks and tying them together and seeing how far they would float. And that was just one of the sweetest times that we had. Just not a care in the world. Literally just seeing, hey, can we put something together and see how far it floats down the river? Just totally disconnected from all of life's cares and worries and not thinking about just, right? All the things we think about, our schedules and bills and all the things.
And when you think about travel and you think about being in an RV, and there are those moments where you have the beautiful vista or the amazing scenery or something. I love the fact that that small moment along the side of that little creek or river, that's what you remember, and that's what comes to your mind was just those moments, just connected, make these little boats. It's those little sweet moments that are priceless that you can't replicate. And I love that. I love hearing those stories. Speaking of that, speaking of your kids, what are some lessons you've learned from them being on the road?
Some lessons I've learned from the kids. Well, one of the things that we've definitely learned is, man, the memories that our kids have. Like, well, they'll bring up something from years ago. Hey, remember that? Remember this? And then too, it's just been being that connected with them and that close proximity for such a long period of time. It's amazing how you're really able to see their uniqueness and the things that God has put inside of them that's going to be part of shaping who they are and the things that they do. Like our Emma, our oldest, she's just got a heart, like I was saying, teens her age that are in troubled situations, and all the way down to little babies. She's just has a heart for the hurting. To watch her see that and then respond to that is just beautiful. And then, Noah is my little entrepreneur. He's our 10-year-old, and he's already has ideas for taking over Fireside someday and the different things. And so just to be able to see those core characteristics and qualities inside of them is really cool. We actually were able to use a lot of things that we learned about our kids with being so close to them in homeschooling to help them create like their own mantras that they repeat as part of their homeschool about what they're going to do and why they're going to do it and the qualities that are inside of them that are going to help them do it and the things that they're going to study to help prepare them for that. Like Emma, our 16-year-old, I just enrolled her today to get a mental a coaching certificate for mental health. So it's a program that she's going through that probably usually only adults go through, but she has that heart to help people through tough situations. So she's 16 years old right now, going through a college class to get a certification on being a mental health coach.
Wow. It's impressive. It's impressive the things you can learn on the road. I love it.
It sure is.
So for you, 5 years on the road, how's it changed you personally?
How's it changed me personally? I don't know. I'd almost say more like it's allowed me to be more of the person that God created me to be. The adventurer, somebody who I like habits, but I don't like schedules and routines. Like just allow me, right? Literally to be able to just start the RV and hey, let's go here now, let's go there now, let's change this and that. So I feel like it's just helped me to be kind of the free bird that I desire to be. We always even say once Emma next January leaves for Huntington Beach to go to YWAM, it's called Youth with a Mission. It's like a missionary training school, college, and we always say once she moves, we'll probably get back in an RV. Like part of the reason we settled down for a little bit is just to help her with her last couple of years of just having some. I mean, because the RV can only get so big, right? The biggest RV you get is 42 foot, maybe 44 foot, if you depend on how you're measuring it, but you can only get so much space in an RV. We had a Grand Lodge 42 DL that was a 2-story really destination trailer. We were cheating towards the end. We had two Grand Lodges. We had one up in Michigan on a lake, one down here in Florida on a ranch, and then a Class A RV, and we traveled between the two and back and forth. And so we were kind of cheating. We were trying to string it along as far as we could.
I love it. You kind of talked about the fact that this has allowed you to be adventurous. And, Journey with Jake, it's an adventure podcast. I like to talk about adventure. And usually I ask this question at the end, but I want to ask it now. For you, Garr, what does adventure mean to you?
For me, adventure means, especially as a Christian, adventure means following the prompting of the Holy Spirit. That's what I think of when you say that is adventure of, all right, Lord, I have my schedule of what I'd like to do, but what do you want to do? One of the post-its I love post-its. If I could flip my camera, you'd see like 100 post-its in front of me with different sayings and scriptures and this and that. But one of the post-its that I have right in front of me says, start in the natural, end in the spiritual. And I have another post-it that says mentoring over meetings. Like if I have a meeting on my calendar, I'm like, meeting. But if I know it's a mentoring where I'm going to get on and we're going to give value back and forth and encourage each other and share stories and testimonies and things that we've learned, then that's a little more exciting for me. But in regards to adventure, I always love to end my meeting or my mentoring with saying in my mind, like, all right, Lord, I'm done with my meeting. What do you want to do? Because there's always something that the Lord has in store. And it's that to me is one of the great adventures, especially when I'm interviewing potential franchisee candidates and I'm going over their application with all the different questions that we ask them about, why they want to become an entrepreneur or why they want to join Fireside, or because one of the things that I've learned about with the adventure of Fireside is, and just in general, is we were created for community. And that's one of the things that happened during COVID when community was really just stripped away from us. Is so many people went into this isolation. I went into what I call my COVID coma. I write about it in both of my last two books. I write about it a little bit, and I got very passive in my business. I actually started drinking like daily and justifying it. Like, oh yeah, I'm still handling my business. I'm not beating my wife. I'm not, drunk driving. All the, but I was seeking that adventure, right? I was seeking community and just the excitement of life, and we were kind of stripped of that, and so that's what adventure is to me. Is just right. We can do community together. We can be free. I love the scripture that says it's for freedom that Christ set us free. Like when we're walking in the freedom that Christians are supposed to walk in, it's for the adventure where we're not super worried about, right, what's finances, what's this, what's that. We're trusting God. And when we're trusting and we're walking in that peace, well then, man, we can have quite the amazing day when we're not walking around or in fear, or guilt and shame and all those things that life can put on us to get us from not walking in the fullness of how we should be walking.
How do you overcome that fear? How do you have the faith over fear? I guess I've heard that saying before. Because when you're in the middle of it and you are stressed and you're worried, it's hard to see a way out, and sometimes it's hard to have that faith when you're struggling. What do you do,
Yeah.
or what's something somebody can do?
Yeah, well, there's a couple things. Faith over fear. That was actually our last fireside retreat that we did. That was the theme of it, was faith over fear. And actually, again, my post-its. I have a post-it in front of me that says fear Gar or faith Gar. So the thoughts that are running through my mind, is this fear Gar talking right now, or is this faith Gar talking right now? And so, first of all, right, it's just simply recognizing and stating, hey, I'm walking in fear right now. And so when we first just acknowledge our feelings, which, right, guys, a lot of times our wives, they're doing that, like 12 seconds after the emotion comes, we're like suppressing it for, 7 months. And then finally we're like, okay, I was scared, or whatever, but first of all, it's, one of my favorite scriptures in regards to this is Isaiah 26:3. It says, you will keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed upon you because he trusted you. So first of all, as a Christian and a Christian entrepreneur, which I feel like being a Christian is hard, right? Being a Christian entrepreneur, I feel like is twice as hard, because as you're building a business and you need to know sales and marketing and accounting and all these things in entrepreneurship, like all these insecurities are always constantly coming to surface in us, right? We run a marketing campaign, and I remember when I decided to turn my Facebook ad on at $50 a day. Oh my gosh, the fear that was in me. Now we run $2,000 a day.
Wow.
We'll spend $50,000 a month on just one campaign. And I remember when $50 a day was just mind blowing to me. So keeping our mind stayed upon God and trusting in Him is right. And then I love the scripture in Hebrews 11:1 where it says, "Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." The thing that I love about that scripture is the word hope, because it says faith is the substance of things hoped for. So a lot of times we're trying to be in faith over fear, but actually we have zero hope. We actually have to go back a step before we get into faith, and we actually have to have hope. And again, another post-it here right in front of me says, hope does not know what's going to happen. It just knows that something will. So first of all, just having hope, saying, you know what, I don't know what's going to happen. I just know something will. And then under that, it says, once hope creates expectation, then faith begins to look for the thing that hope is feeling. So once we begin to have that hope, that, hey, I have hope, things are going to work out. And how do we get that hope? First, by keeping our mind stayed upon God. And one of the main ways that I do that is I just simply look back in my past of where I've been in other situations where I could have easily had no hope, but yet I got through it. Right. So I look back when I'm like, man, I remember when I lost my house in 2008 because I got fired from my job for sharing my faith. and God brought me through that. And I remember when this happened in 2010, and God brought me through that. And I remember when this happened with my child, and I felt hopeless, but then God brought me through that, and I began to remember, like it says in, I forget, maybe Psalms, where it says David encouraged himself in the Lord. I began to remember all these times where God has showed up and brought me through. I love that saying where it says, uh, 5 years ago, how does that go? 5 years ago, you'd kill to be the person that you are today. But then the person we are today, we're thinking of, oh man, I wish I was just this, right? So it's so easy to forget all the victories. You know, there's a really good book about this called Gap in the Gain. Have you ever heard of that book?
I don't think so.
It's one second here. Let me turn around.
Sure.
It's by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. It's called The Gap and the Gain. And he wrote another book called 10X is Easier Than 2X. And basically, The Gap and the Gain talks about how we could put 10 things on our to do list for the day and we get 8 of them done. Maybe we even get 9 of them done. What do we do when we lay in bed at night? We
Thinking about
literally
the
think about
one.
the one thing we
Yeah.
did accomplish. Yeah, right?
Hmm.
But if we were to think of the 9 things we did accomplish, we would get all pumped up, excited, and then we would take that energy into the next day. But we don't do that. We're so quick as humans to forget all the things that are going right, and we only focus on the couple of things that are going wrong.
So true. And I love what you shared. Thank you for sharing that. This is what I love about this podcast. And this is not a Christian based podcast or anything necessarily like that, but I love hearing people's faith and how they overcome things. And I appreciate you sharing that because that's important. Before we wrap up the RV, I do a couple just, I guess we'll call them rapid fire / quick questions on RV. Any particular favorite RV meal that you guys have as a family?
RV meal?
Yeah.
Man, I feel like it's been forever since we've RV'd now. It's weird, and it really hasn't. It just seems like ancient history to me. And I'm literally right outside my window is my RV. I've got a friend taking it this weekend. I don't rent my RV anymore just because it's got
Yeah.
150,000 miles on it. I rented it a ton, paid for it 3 times over, and used it a million times. Man, anything over a campfire. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hot dogs are definitely a favorite. Anything over a campfire. Yeah.
There's something about that, a campfire and cooking over a campfire. There's something about the food makes
Oh,
it
there
extra
sure is.
special.
Just sitting around a campfire is just so beautiful. And just camping in my webinar that I do that explains our franchise opportunity, one of the images that pulls up on the screen, it's 2 people talking and one person is holding a bag of dog poop. And then right to the left of it says, oh, they're both wearing their pajamas, and it says camping, the only place where you can walk around in your pajamas with the bag of dog poop and strike up a conversation with a total stranger and it's normal. Like, that's our being. That's how cool it is.
I love it. That's fantastic. Any particular campsite that just has extra special meaning besides where you're at now, Okeechobee's, or some other like one that you're like, that place had special meaning to us?
Yeah, there's a couple campsites that we would go to every year. So there's one in Michigan that our friends actually own that we would go there every year. There's this little like red tube kind of thing that the kids climb through. I've got a picture of my Isabella in there, I think like 5 years in a row. Like I would recreate the picture with her, have her put her eyes through the little peephole on it. So that's probably the most favorite one for sure there. That's such a sweet memory to just go back and back and back. And then it's like it's long enough that you miss it, but not long enough that the kids forget it. So like right when you
Sure.
pull in, just I'm like, oh, that's a candy store. I remember the candy store. Oh my gosh, yeah, the swimming pool. I remember that. That's so cool. So that is so much fun. So we didn't actually get there this year, but I think probably the last 8 years in a row we probably went there.
Nice. And then finally, what's that one essential piece of gear that you can't travel without?
One piece of gear that you can't travel without is a griddle.
Gotta have the griddle.
You got to have the griddle. It's funny because when we were full timing, I mean, we had all the gear. We were loaded up. But then if like we just go somewhere for like a handful of days or a weekend, man, we've got it down to a science. We're like, okay, bikes, griddle, and loveys, for the kids at night. Like we know, like two outfits, we can do laundry, this and that. Yeah, the little, the griddle is you can do so much on that, and especially with the camper, you only got so much space inside, so you want to be strategic.
I love it. And then now you mentioned earlier, you kind of alluded to it that you said you have a couple books. Tell me about the books. What are they? Why did you write them? What's kind of the purpose behind those?
Yeah, so I've got a couple books. One of them right here. It's called My Real Estate Story. So you can go to myrealestatestory.com and download it for free. Or if you want to hold it in your hand, you can buy it off Amazon. But I just love really just getting the information into people's hands. So My Real Estate Story, the subtitle is From Lawnmowers to RVs, My Entrepreneurial Journey Filled with Faith, Failures, and Fun Times. And basically, it's my first business proposal I gave to my dad in fifth grade for a lawn care business up to our RV business. And that just talks about my businesses. But I feel like most importantly, it talks about my failures. And same with my latest book. My latest book is called My His Story. And it's my story through the eyes of God. And it's my journey. And basically, what happened with that book was I was getting ready for our fireside retreat in January, and the Lord woke me up at 4:14 in the morning in one of my God spots where I go and I just hear from God. Believe it or not, a lot of people can connect with this. You get it when you're in the shower and all of a sudden you have like a brilliant idea come to you? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, something with the shower. It's like this magical place where, like, just all of a sudden you're like, oh man, I literally have a dry erase marker in my shower so I can write on the wall because in the shower I get these ideas. Well, that's the same with my hot tub. That's like one of my God spots. So normally when I go to my hot tub, though, I leave my phone so I can just disconnect and just hear from the Lord. Well, this morning he told me to bring my phone with me and he told me to open up a Google Doc. So I did that and I started voice texting. 4.5 hours later, and this wasn't all in the hot tub. I got out of the hot tub after about 45 minutes. 4.5 hours later, they wake me up. I was unconscious now. 4.5 hours later, literally, the Lord had walked me through like a half dozen moments in my life, starting in second grade when I went up to my dad. He was passed out on the couch, and I came home from church, and I was sharing with him a rock that I had painted for him. God brought me to that moment and showed me the pain of the moment where my dad just kind of dismissed me, and he showed me where the devil whispered a lie to me about my identity. And then God spoke the truth to me, and he took me through about a half dozen different moments in my life where something happened, a lie was spoken to me about who I am, and then he spoke the truth to me about who I really am. And this story is so beautiful because literally the stone from second grade is intertwined through the whole story. I'm at a men's retreat in the woods. We go out in the woods. We do what's called a monastic fast. We're in the woods for the whole day. We don't talk the whole day. We have this book telling us what to do. One of the things it said to do was go on a walk. So I'm just walking around the woods. I look down on the ground. I see this white stone, and I hear the Lord speak to my mind clear as day. Pick up that stone. So I picked it up, put it in my pocket. Later, I'm sitting there doing the homework assignment, and the homework assignment says read Revelations 2:17. Well, that scripture says, "And to him who overcomes, I will give him a white stone." Like, you can't make this stuff up. The
It's
Lord tells
amazing.
me grab the white stone out of my pocket, so I do, and he tells me something. So all the way to the end of the story, I'm like blubbering idiot, crying. I'm telling my wife, "Oh my gosh, now this." All the way to the end, I'm sitting on my chair, wrapping things up. Isabella, my 8-year-old, walks down and she has this box, which is sitting right down here. And we're getting ready for the retreat, right? And Isabella says, "Dad, I have this box of prizes I made to hand out to people." She starts showing me all these things. She's like, "Dad, there's one more thing, but I really don't want to give it to you." But God just kept telling me. And I said, "God, it's so important. My best friend Coral gave it to me." She's like, "Anyway, Dad, here it is." She reaches into the box, Jake, and she pulls out a white stone and hands it to me. And I just start crying again. And she's like, "What, Dad, you all right?" Like, wow, I'm glad I listened to God. And that's the story. And that the whole thing about it is when we have painful moments in life, and I put a little framework at the end of the book. When we have a painful moment in life, it's an indicator. And I like to say it, Tony Robbins says when we have these moments to get curious, you know, and Tony Robbins will say like God, the earth, whatever you call it, Tony's like, I choose to call it God, but whatever you call it, these are indicators. So when we feel this pain, we want to press into it and get curious and say, okay, why am I feeling the pain in this moment? And we'll discover there's a root to that pain. But if we press into that, the root of that pain, on the other side of that, there's freedom for us to actually hear the truth of here's a painful moment that happened in your life. Here's a lie that you believed in the moment, but here's the actual truth. That painful moment, and at the bottom of my book, I put life happens for you, not to you. So when life happens, like I said, that one of my kids had a painful moment, life happened to them, but God actually used it for them. So it made them part of who they are today. And now that pain can actually be used for purpose. So my child is actually able to help other children if they walk through a similar moment. So life actually happened. We can look at it as a victim or a victor. And in my book, it's how to look at life as a victor. When life happens to you, say, wait, actually, that life actually happened for me, and uncover that. And I lay the framework out for how to do that at the end of it.
Love it. What was the purpose behind doing it? Did God call you to do it? Is that kind of the whole reason you want to do it? You just want to get your story out there?
Yeah, that was totally preparation for that retreat. That ended up being the framework for the retreat that weekend. And so I walked my franchisees through this process, and we just had, it's just beautiful time. We did different exercises. Like we just got quiet, closed our eyes, put on some music, and just, hey, what's a lie that I've been believing? And then just asking what's the truth. And then as people heard the lie and the truth, they went up onto a chalkboard and they wrote down the lie, and then they wrote down the truth. And just several other things we did like that. And then after that, I thought, you know what? I might as well take this transcript and send it to my publisher. I even say right at the beginning of the book, I have a QR code that's a video of me explaining how all this happened. And then it says, hey, this book was basically a preparation for a retreat. So it's kind of like raw information. So I didn't do a ton to organize it because I didn't want to try and orchestrate it a certain way. I wanted to stay as raw and generic as possible,
I
as
love
far
it.
as how it happened.
I think it's a beautiful thing that you've done, and I think it's a beautiful thing that you're sharing. What does the future look like? Fireside RV Rental, the family. What are you hoping for moving into the future?
It's serving Christian entrepreneurs and serving my wife and children to fulfill their callings. That is the future for me and my entrepreneurial adventure. One of the ways that we're doing that is we just bought a diner 3 months ago. We bought the oldest diner in our town. It was built in 1951. So next year will be 75 years. It's the oldest diner. And my wife was a customer service manager when we met, and she's always had a heart for business and managing and working. And now that our youngest is 8 and we homeschool, we bought this little diner and we all work at it now. And that's one of the things that we're doing to prepare our kids for their calling. So it's all everything we do is, well, I don't like to say everything. I don't like to say everything and all the time and always. I don't like those definitive terms. We try to live our life in a manner that is preparing our kids to fulfill their calling. And our big focus for our kids is like their character, their integrity, them seeing needs around them and meeting the needs. So a lot of our homeschooling is based around that. It's like, okay, how to add, divide, those couple things, like that's good on math. Unless we see something really in them where they're going to be a mathematician. Outside of that, I want them to master reading. I want them to fall in love with the art of learning. We enroll in lots of different courses together and do courses and programs and retreats and stuff together. So that's the future, is continuing down that path. We serve at food drives together. That's part of our homeschooling. So they can see, right, the people right in their community that, man, are so thankful just to get, they literally wait overnight in a car to get maybe $60 worth of food, stuff like that. So it's continued to help my wife and kids fulfill their calling and then serve Christian entrepreneurs.
I love it. So if somebody has interest in either Fireside RV Rental, and I think you mentioned earlier, where they can get your book. Yeah, tell everybody where they can follow along and learn more about Fireside RV Rental and your books and everything.
Yeah, if you go to firesidervrental.com, you can look on there to see where our locations are. You can rent an RV. So if you've never gone on an adventure or or a journey, all right, go on there, rent an RV, take your family for the weekend. If you have an RV and it's sitting around 99% of the time, you can put it into our management program. Or if you're entrepreneurial minded, you can check out our franchise opportunity. Our franchise, when I say serve Christian entrepreneurs, that's who I'm called to serve. But a caveat to that, if you're not a Christian and you go through our application process and you understand, like, hey, Garr runs his business based off the Bible. So if I get on a mentoring call with Garr, I'm going to be okay with him, quoting 10 scriptures and praying for me at the end. That's cool, but that doesn't mean that you have to be a Christian to be a Fireside franchise. I just want you to know that's how I'm wired and that's how I serve people. So I don't want anyone to feel like, man, you pulled the wool over our eyes, whatever the case is. And then our books, yeah, myrealestatestory.com. And maybe if you want to, I can send you the links for the show notes.
Yeah,
And
I'll
then
include it in the show notes.
myhisstory.com.
What's the last one?
Myhisstory.com.
Myhisstory.com. Myhisstory.com. I love it.
Yep.
This was fascinating. I learned a lot about you and who you are. I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate the fact that you're serving your community, that you're serving others, you're serving your family. I think that's important. This was great. Garr, thank you so much for coming on Journey with Jake.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jake.
Man, what a ride with Garr Russell today. If you want to check out more of what he's up to, head over to firesidervrental.com and you can grab his books at myhisstory.com. Hey, I just want to pause and say thank you. I'm honestly so grateful you tune in each week. This podcast has been such a cool journey for me personally. I get to sit down with people like Garr, and it honestly inspires me just as much as I hope it inspires you. I know for me, it keeps me looking for adventure and for ways to grow in my own life, and I'm glad we're sharing that together. Next week, I've got Lisa Burgess on the show. She's got some amazing stories about life overseas as the wife of a professional basketball player. And trust me, there are plenty of ups and downs you won't want to miss. So thanks again for listening. Thanks for being part of this journey with me. And until next time, just remember, it's not always about the destination as it is about the journey. Take care, everybody.